I wanted to take you guys back to see the future site of my shooting range. This is just some scrap from previous owner I haven't cleaned up yet. Back in this little spot will be where to shoot from and shoot back into that hill there. So what I did with this paracord was I tied together a 100 foot and a 50 foot, totaling 150 foot, which is 50 yards. And I ran it across just to give myself a line of sight. I do have a laser rangefinder, which I will use to get more precise measurements when I actually put up the targets and things. But just for preliminary brush clearing and getting my line of sight in, it was perfect. Really did the job. I think a lot of new shooters are really turned off from the hobby when their first experience shooting is at a public range. You know, if you're not accustomed to everything that goes on there, it can be really intimidating, and you don't feel safe and whatever, and it turns people off. So I always wanted a range where I can train new people and work with individuals and in addition to myself. But yeah, you can see I got to get the chainsaw down here and clear a few more trees out of the way. But I had been watching this low area. It actually, all the hill drains off and goes down there into that valley. And then on the other side here, it drains down over that way. So this area stays dry here and isn't going to turn into a big mud puddle. It's almost like this was meant to be a range right here. But you can see how big of a hill this is. It goes very high up there. So shooting into that, I mean, it would take a really stray shot to go way up over that hill. And even on the other side of that hill beyond it, it's there's no human habitation. It's just countless miles of national forest back there. All hills and forests just like this. So this is about as safe as an area as you can find. And coming up for the general target area, we'll just have to see how that measures out. Of course, I'll also be putting in shorter distance stations for handgun shooting and things like that. And it'll be the same way. Just gotta try to make it so you're shooting at equal level on either side. So making those shorter distances was the easy part. It was more getting the longer distance sighted in. That's the big challenge. And then I can just work from there with the smaller ranges. I had really hoped to get in 100-yard distance because for sighting in centerfire rifle optics, 100 yards is kind of like the magic number. And for those who don't understand why that is, I can explain it in a future video or something. But what I had taken 100 yards of string just like this, and in order to try to get that distance in a valley like this meant making more altitude that way and on the other side and trying to go up higher. And I was running that string through everywhere, and man, it was just wasn't going to happen. I mean, I can get the distance, but it would have taken me 6 months to clear out all the trees, and that's just ridiculous for something like that. So I'm just going to have to settle for the 50 yards, and that's good. I'm very happy with that. I mean, 50 yards is really ideal for shooting a 22. That's a fun distance for that. And even with more powerful center fire rifles, it's still going to be fun and enjoyable. So, and doing that measurements really gave me a lot of information about my property. And when it comes to property defense, the more information you got, the better. I mean, I learned that after hours and hours of measuring and running this string, that I could not find a line of sight here on my property that was 100 yards. So that tells me if I couldn't do it, that if there were an armed intruder of some kind, it's going to be an engagement at a distance under 100 yards. So when you see these YouTube videos of where somebody's comparing this rifle cartridge to this one, and they start talking about what differences they have, how they perform out at 500 yards, well, that's completely irrelevant to me here in the woods like this. Just like what's relevant for me would be completely irrelevant for somebody who, say, lives in western Kansas, where it's totally flat for miles and miles all the way out to the horizon, or somebody that lives in grizzly bear defense country. So that's the thing is don't listen to what somebody else is trying to tell you. I see all these videos about this is the absolute best rifle when SHTF, or this is the cartridge or rifle you have to have, or if you don't have it when stuff happens, you might as well just lay down and die. No, don't listen to any of that nonsense. Take the measurements yourself of your property, where your different sight lines are, and actually measure it, because when people guesstimate, they're always way off. We have a tendency to overestimate short distances and underestimate longer distances. I don't know exactly why that is, but something about the way the human eye perceives distance. So use the actual string like that and measure your different lines of sights on your property, so you know exactly in your terrain what you're up against, what kind of distances you got. If you've got that information, plus the game animals and the dangerous animals that live in your area, it's very easy to take that and narrow down what kind of rifle and cartridge would be best for your situation. And always stick to the classic cartridges that are very easy to find in the store. Unless you are a competitive shooter looking to win competitions with your custom built bench rest rifle, there's really no need to get any cartridge that's been released in the last 30 years or so. I mean, they don't offer any advantages over the classic cartridges, which have been taking game and defending people for decades and decades. They're easy to find. Stick to that stuff. So don't get caught up in the new fancy stuff coming out, because I mean, there's been hundreds of cartridges that when they were released were the hot new cartridge that was better than all the others. But they just over time were proven to not be any more useful than the ones that pre-existed already, and they've gone the way of the dodo bird. Now, if you've got a rifle chambered for that, good luck finding ammo for it, or if you can, it costs a fortune. And trying to sell the rifle, you're going to get less back than you would otherwise because it's in the wrong chambering. So narrow it down, just stick to the basics and find what works exactly on your specific terrain and your specific property.